I realized that not caring about money actually brings money. I've had instances that have changed my perspective on how I view my own life. And part of that is just having a sense of your own mortality.
Welcome to another edition of Living Boldly with Purpose. And I'm Dr. B. I'm your host today. Today is going to be one of those shows where here's what I want you to do right now. Before I even start talking, I want you to get out a piece of paper. I want to get you out a pencil. I want you, whether you think you're going to take notes on your phone, you're not. So I want you to get an actual piece of paper out, a pen, because we struggle with the notes that we put on our phone sometimes because we can't keep up. Because this is going to be one of those episodes that you were going to go, not only are you going to want to call Jason, but you're going to want to say, how do I get to the websites that he's telling me, which I'm going to put on the bottom? How do I get part of his projects that he's doing, which you're going to want to do? How do I get more information of all the things that have just been going incredibly well, not only in his life, but the rest of our lives as well. So I want you to have that there. When we think about success leaving clues, today we're going to probably spend a little bit of time. We're going to talk about finances and money. And I was just doing a podcast with a gentleman who gave a perspective to me that I hadn't heard before. And he talked about athletes, and all of us know about like football players and football seasons and how hard athletes from, high school being an athlete to college being an athlete to, ultimately, if you get into the pros, that we spend in order to be that athlete, a countless amount of hours prepping, preparing, going to the weight room, getting up early for workouts, studying play sheets, doing all these things. And Jason may be able to relate to this, so that they can play once a Saturday, 11 weeks in a row. Football, I guess, is 17 weeks in a row. All that preparation for 1 hour of playtime 11 times. And then we go, I want to go to work for 3 days. I want everything to work out. And I want to have everything. I want to make countless amounts of money. And I haven't become the person I need to be in order to do any of that stuff. And we think we got this instant society. But when we all tried it when we were athletes, and we were willing to do all that hard work for 1 hour, 11 times. And we won't do any of that hard work for the rest of our lives, to just go incredibly well. And so as of today, as we're talking, and Jason and I are talking, and I want him to kind of start out with his story, I want you to really start thinking through that. What are you doing differently? We're now in 2025 as we're recording this. What are you doing differently this year that you're going to put in that much work on you, getting better in order to have way more than 11 1-hour days? And so, Jason, thank you for being on. Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let him tell his story, and then I have all this stuff written down that he does that he's probably not going to talk about. So I'll tell you about all that really cool stuff after you hear his story, and they go, that's why he's able to do that. That's how he became that person that was able to do that. And then we'll chop it up with just a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be that important information that you're going to write down. So, Jason, please start out with your story. I know you were born somewhere. Doesn't matter what point of your life you were born, but you were born somewhere. And then tell us a little bit how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, I hope I was born somewhere. Otherwise, this would be a much more, actually, it'd probably make for a much more interesting podcast. I'll tell you that much. But
yes, I hear you.
No, I listen, I really appreciate what you just said, Dr. B. I mean, at the end of the day, I love the saying, it took me 10 years to look like an overnight success.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because a lot of times we only see like what happens. We don't see the grime and the grit, and I'm a big fan of talking to other founders because it reinforces what it takes to actually build something from nothing, or do something extraordinary, or do something out of the norm, or even just be better at your job. That's an extraordinary thing. It doesn't have to be like, sending rockets to Mars,
Yeah.
Anything that puts you out of your comfort zone is pretty extraordinary, because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be out of your comfort zone. So I appreciate that. I really do. So I came from a a town in Long Island, New York. That's where I was born. A place called Massapequa, actually Massapequa Park, and famously known for the birthplace and the high school of Seinfeld and a few
Oh,
others.
okay.
Well, actually, my mother went to school with Seinfeld, you know,
Cool.
that he was very quiet and reserved, you know, and like kind of kept to himself. Unbelievable that he's like created one of the most famous, you know, shows of all time, you know. Grew up in Massapequa, and I grew up in a town that like was sort of divided from like, the haves and have-nots. You know, you had like the other side of the tracks, and then you had the other side of the tracks, right? And on the other side of the tracks, we were on the lower income side of the tracks. But sort of like I got to see during high school a lot of kids that like 16 years old, they were driving those BMWs, you know, and my family couldn't hardly afford to get me, you know, the bicycle I wanted, you know. But like I guess the reason why I bring it up is because I grew up wanting, you know, I kind of developed a little bit about who I am today. It's sort of like this chip on my shoulder that I want things that, you know, I want to obtain things that seem, you know, out of my reach because I grew up that way. I graduated high school, and you know, a lot of these stories about entrepreneurship have these like grand entrances. You know, I studied this and I went into this, and it miraculously, you know, entrepreneurship sort of just fell in my lap. You know, board stuff. I wanted to pay for it. Went job to job. Couldn't find what I was looking for. Didn't make enough money. Found out something I could do on my own, and I went for it. And like that became the early stages of my life from, you know, even when I was in elementary school selling candy, you know, I basically wanted the money, you know, and, you know, I've been thinking about a lot about this later, and I'm going to go over my story in full detail because I'll kind of go back and forth. But, you know, at the end of the day, like now for me, as a 46-year-old man going on 47, my life has become more about purpose and less about money. And it's meaningful to say that because I don't know where your listeners are at in their journeys, you know, what they're looking to accomplish. But I think, you know, I don't think we should put so much pressure on ourselves on why we start things. You know, it's where you end up that matters, and it's the journey that matters. And why you get into something completely different than the outcome. I started wanting money, come to find out that the way to make money isn't caring about money at all. It's caring about the value you're creating, you know? And I learned that along the way. And that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears right there, you know, and a lot of years, you know, in my tenure as an entrepreneur and being self-employed and owning my businesses. That's something very profound that I learned along the way. I didn't graduate college. I didn't follow the norm. Matter of fact, when I started my first business, it was unconventional to do so. I know that starting a business right now is the rage, and being an entrepreneur or a creator is easier than ever. But when I started, a startup wasn't like a term that anybody was used to. You know, when I brought home my first check, my parents thought I was a drug dealer. You know, they couldn't understand what the hell, how'd you make this? Like, who paid you? You know? So, you know, and kids, you know, that were, you know, shooting for something big in their life were becoming lawyers and doctors and working for big companies. They weren't, you know, starting weird businesses. Ultimately, that's the path that I went into. My first business was in the debt relief space. I was introduced to consumer debt relief, helping people that fell into debt. I got exposed to the whole ecosystem, which I found in some ways I connected with helping people really well. In other ways, I was repulsed by the predatory practices.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
In the debt relief space, you're kind of making money on the most vulnerable people, and it's a very simple business model. And people that tend to get in these businesses are not the best actors in the world. And I was raised by a great family, you know, and I always wanted to make money, but I wanted to do it the right way. But I saw a need for an overhaul of the business, but I couldn't do it on my own. And this was going back 20 years ago, before the advent of the iPhone and before venture capital funded our ideas, or you can make money on your own so easily and create a website basically for free, or use ChatGPT to do anything for you.
Oh my gosh,
right?
yeah.
Which is our most recent, like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But eventually I was enamored with streamlining processes. So out of my debt company that I started, in several iterations of it, I built an automated system that helped the flow of paperwork, and that became a tech company. We raised several rounds of venture capital and funding. We exited that business a few years ago. And in the middle, I actually built a startup incubator where I helped other startups and founders. I started it in 2010 in New York City. We grew it nationally with some really large organizations that we partnered with. We at our peak, we had, over 9 locations as these centers for startups to grow their businesses. And I got really into community and helping others and helping people with their ideas and bringing them to reality. I exited that business through a large M&A transaction with a Fortune 50 company. And then I got back in the game, and my target of focus, which I believe will hopefully be the defining characteristic of my business career, is in debt relief, because I started there and I had a chip on my shoulder to fix it. And I believe that with modern tools, you can fix a really crappy space. And, there's an app for everything. There's an app that picks you up on the corner. There's an app that helps you get your groceries, but there's no app that helps people through the most vulnerable of times, which is when they start to fall behind on their bills or have already fell behind on their bills. So, did a lot of due diligence, raised several rounds of venture capital, and been able to get to a point where now we've launched about 6 months ago. We have tens of thousands of users with over $3 billion of debt enrolled onto the platform. And we're experiencing a level of growth where I'm very confident that this will be a business that we can provide everybody that's going through these situations in every house in America, hopefully sometime soon. And on top of that, I still like to work on side projects that bring me a lot of joy. Most recently, I made the move from New York to South Florida, and I got approached to run an accelerator program with MIT, which is a really great institution, and with the backing of the government in South Florida. We've been working on launching an accelerator that's been a program that MIT has been running for the last 10 years. So that's a lot. I just said a lot. I work on things that are off pocket, cool, that I find interesting, but I love just getting into really cool stuff and, seeing where life takes me. A little bit of structure, a little bit of chaos, a lot of stress, and, what I find to be meaningful impact along the way.
Wow. So New York to South Florida, I'm assuming there's a lot of people from New York in South Florida, so it's not a lot of change in culture, or is it? Is the culture, was it a different shock, or just why the move? What encouraged you to say?
Yeah, no. So I'll answer your first question. I'll answer your question that you asked first.
Okay.
And then I'll go into the journey. But so there are some aspects. Yes. Florida, especially South Florida, Miami area, which is where I live. It is commonly referred to as the sixth borough. And
okay.
So it's very common that, and Florida's got a bad rap in a lot of different ways, politics aside, there's a lot of scam that comes out of Florida. There's a lot of this, there's a lot of that. But I think Florida, I know Florida has gone through a lot of change even in my lifetime. I've seen Florida become a great place to retire, that quickly became a great place to visit, that quickly became a great place to live. And I think it's becoming quickly a great place to work, right? But it's an evolved state. And I think a lot of this has come on, at least in my case, as a byproduct of the pandemic, Like, I thought I was going to be in New York for the rest of my life. You couldn't pull me out of New York if you had a forklift taking me out. I'm a New Yorker at heart. I love New York. I love the Yankees. I love the city. I'm weird, Dr. B. I love congestion. I love being around weird people that are different than me. You know, I love being around diversity, but not like the political sense or whatever we call diversity today. I mean, like real diversity, like people have wildly different backgrounds that you would never see where they live. I just love being around. I love learning. You know, I love learning from other people. And New York is a great place for that. And there definitely is a lot of similarities between the culture of Florida and the culture of New York, especially because so many young New Yorkers are moving to a place like South Florida. However, that said, I still find Florida a place, South Florida, where it's still very young in like the high growth tech venture capital ecosystem. And we've had a mayor, which is Mayor Suarez, who's been doing a phenomenal job at ushering and evangelizing how important it is to build a technological infrastructure, a technological like ecosystem that welcomes great ideas and gets funding. But the statistics, the data speaks for themselves. Most amount of venture capital is raised in San Francisco and New York City. Yeah. It wasn't always like that in New York, and it won't always like that be in Miami. It's just what it's like today. Culture's a little different on that aspect. So still got to go to New York and take meetings. Still got to go to San Francisco and take meetings. Hopefully one day I won't have to travel that much. So that's the cultural relevance and the connected tissue on that aspect. As far as why I moved personally, so I got really disenchanted with New York during the pandemic. I feel like, you know, ultimately, I think that the city's not run like as a great place to live anymore. Not to get political with any of you or any of your viewers. I'm just saying from a living perspective and a cost of living perspective, New York City is extremely expensive a place to live. I know I'm born in Long Island, but I basically grew up in Manhattan because I lived there my whole adult life. And it is ridiculously expensive. I mean, you have state income tax, you have city tax. And to be honest, it's not really well kept these days. You know, the administration is just not doing a great job for the people that live there. And I got kind of sick of it. That, and on top of that, I sort of fell in love with Florida. For the last several years, I participated on the board of a state-run institution, Florida International University. And I've got a lot of joy out of coming here and meeting the people that I met with. So it was sort of a natural progression. And the icing on the cake and the nail in the coffin was my wife wanting a change as well.
Gotcha. You know, and that makes sense. You know, I lived in Southern California for a while. I grew up in Denver, where I live now. And then one of
you're in Denver.
Yeah, I'm in Denver.
Denver, so Colorado. Okay, so I should tell you that I lived in Boulder before I moved to Florida. I'm just
New York to Boulder and then to South Florida. Okay.
So Brooklyn to Boulder to Boca. I could just do 3 Bs.
I love it. I love it. Did you enjoy Boulder? I mean, you're obviously not here anymore. So
we bought a house on a mountain. It was like living inside a snow globe. I loved it from a scenery perspective. We love to hike from a hiking perspective. Outdoors is phenomenal. I just found it very isolating, to be honest.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. Absolutely see and how it could be. And you know, as I talked to my wife about where we're going to end up and where we're going to move, she loves it here. Scenery, all that kind of stuff. Lived by doctor. I had a friend when I worked in California, Patrick David, who moved to Southern Florida now, and he's building his empire there.
Oh yeah,
guest and all that kind of stuff.
Dropping that name.
Oh
yeah,
that's
cool. That's cool.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
worked
that's
together
cool.
for 5 years, and it was just a phenomenal, just an incredible human being. And he's incredible, I guess I would say.
Huge fan. Huge fan.
Um, and then I have other folks that are moving there and deciding to move there as well. When we think about serving people, because as I'm hearing you, you have this purpose to really get out and help other people do what they have. And when we think about relationship with money and relationship with things that are so hard to go through, there's a person like yourself who's out there to do it. Where did that value come from, or that character come from, where it isn't just like you said, some bad characters that are in the industry that just want to take from the most vulnerable? How do you turn to the person who, okay, no, I want to help people, and I know if I do that, life is going to be incredible?
It's been years of realizations, Dr. B. I mean, at the end of the day, by the way, is that what everybody calls you, Dr. B? Okay, great. All right. I don't want to, I mean, I don't know what is that the norm?
That's the norm. People, before I was a doctor, people call me Brian, but there's so many Brians in the world. There's lots of Brian Arnolds in the world. There's a ninja warrior guy that everybody says, "What's your website?" Well, how come I keep giving the ninja warrior guy? I don't know. That's his name. We got the same name, so it's a very common name. Dr. B is probably as common, but that's what people have been calling me since I went to school. And
I love it. I love it. I love it. I feel comfortable calling you Dr. B. I just didn't know if it was proper. You know what I mean?
No,
I'd be like low key insulting you, and I'm like, but it says it, so I'm good.
Yeah, put it there. Yeah. Exactly.
So I think, look, I think that everybody goes through profound experiences in life. I think that along the way, I've had several instances where not only have I realized that not caring about money actually brings money, I've had instances that have sort of changed my perspective on how I view my own life. And part of that is just having a sense of your own mortality, mostly. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, most recently, and I'm not saying this to be morbid, because there's a silver lining here, but my dad passed away when I first started my new business. And it was quite fitting because I knew that getting into this project, it was more about the mission and vision of the company rather than, the business opportunity that existed. Albeit it is an amazing business opportunity to tackle a category that's not being handled properly. But as my dad passed, and I was able to, be sort of part of that, and I'm grateful for that, it gave me a sense of my own mortality. And the reality is that we're just not going to be here forever. And, I want to build things that weren't just about something so, meaningless as transactional, things and buying things and owning things. It was more about the value that I can create for other people. And I've had several instances in my life where I've taken that posture and mindset, and my work product is just so much better when you care about something like that. And it also helps you in so many different instances, like developing business relationships. I went out yesterday to lunch with a very wealthy individual who's basically a billionaire, and he's self-made, works his ass off every day of his life, and loves every minute of it. And I ask him, I say, what drives you? Like, you've already done it. And he's like, I just love the kill. I love getting in rooms with people. I love meeting cool people. It would kill me if this wasn't in my life. It has nothing to do with money. And the quicker you realize that, the more successful you'll be. And success, in my view, isn't just a direct byproduct of the amount of zeros you have in your bank account. Mm-hmm. As I'm getting older, to me, success is more about happiness. And most, rich people that I know, aside from like the lunch meeting I had yesterday with this phenomenal individual, most rich people I know aren't really that happy, in all honesty, So it's obvious to me that money can't buy you happiness. And so I've sort of leaned in on that from a personal perspective. And that has definitely not only helped my personal life, but it's absolutely bled into my business life. When I meet someone, I really want to get to know them. I want to speak from my soul. I want to trust them. I want them to trust me. And the only way to do that is to do it authentically. And the only way to do that authentically is to just let it flow without any other intentions other than helping others. And it's magic what you get back.
Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. I have a prayer every day. Dear Lord, give me the wisdom to do the things that will serve you or help please you and serve others, and helping people become the person they need to be in order to do whatever it is. And when I really start thinking about relationships and people and what our society has put on people in order to fit in, like you have to have all these zeros behind your name. You have to have all these, when you talk about authenticity and who is that real person, and what, success absolutely doesn't mean how many zeros, but somehow we've decided that it does. And then when I think about, when we think about relationship with money, how many people never get to learn about money, never get to understand it? We're in this culture that says, go have, and then you can figure out how to do the thing to get what you have, and then figure out, how to become the person who should have it. And so now you're in this business and you're working through this business that helps people understand that after they've gone through this trauma of, I have all this debt now, I bought all these things, I have all these things, I can't handle it, I've never became that person who does it. How do you help people, or from a 50,000 point view, or even from individual view, realize that this isn't what's important, and even after we help you get out of it, we don't want you to get back in it based on the habits that you already have? Is that part of what you're doing on the debt, the debt side of things, and with software? Because people are ashamed, right? Shame is a terrible emotion that we have.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hole and the gap that I think what you mentioned is some of the holes and gaps that exist today for people that are going through this problem. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the solutions that exist today, they're mostly crap. They're expensive. They're selling you into a program. You have to pay them even when you don't have money to pay your bills. It just sucks, right? So we set out to change how that works, but also we understand psychologically, because we dealt with thousands of people, and in my career, tens of thousands of people, if not millions, of people that are going through this problem. We ultimately understand that their dignity has sort of been stripped away, and it's bad, Dr. B. Like, when you get yourself into these situations, a lot of times you're not even telling other people. It's like you live double life, right? You're not even telling your significant other. It's embarrassing, because we're taught in America that one of the fundamental things that makes you a good person or worthy is a good credit score. And if you don't have a good credit score, people feel less than. And one of the things I set out to do early on is let people know that, like, you're more than your credit score. Wow. And the problem is sometimes existential, meaning it's not something that you can control on your own. Like, there's a portion of people that go out and just, spend money and know that, like, they're being completely irresponsible. But the majority of time, inflation in today's day and age has completely decimated the American dream. And what that means is, like, because your grocery bill has gone up 5x in the last 3 years due to inflation, that we've never seen this level of inflation in, at least in our generation, right? And that's a byproduct that has nothing to do with you, right? Yeah. You didn't choose to pump money into the economy like the government did during, COVID, or to solve issues. I mean, the systemic reaction our government has basically bestowed upon us is these inflationary times. And Wall Street definitely tells another story, because if you ask the politicians, or you look at, the stock market, we're hitting all-time highs. We're hitting all-time highs. The economy looks great. But for the average American, it isn't. And there's a level of deep, deep stress that comes along with that. And if you look at the data shows us that the suicide rates and divorce rates in America are closely tied to the elevated debt, consumer debt that people are going through. And that is what motivates me to swim in this lane. So while we're doing our job, we set out to not only find solutions for people, but we want them to know along the way that they're going to be okay and they're not alone. And ultimately what we found, because we do these studies on watching people when they opt in for case studies through the app, we could watch people with their permission, of course, go through the platform, through a video and watching their reaction. The fact that they don't have to do anything and that there's an app that can do this for them, that speaks to them and lets them know. I mean, one of the first things we tell people when they enter in the app is, take a sigh of relief, as we navigate your debt together, right? And when people see that and something that was built directly for them presents itself, you could see the reaction is always the same. It is an actual sigh of relief. And that's why we're calling it relief, because we're mixing getting out of debt with a level of calm that you would find in a meditation app. Because we know it's not just about the problem that you're going through. It's about the feelings that you're having while you're going through the problem, right? So we want to let people know, look, millions of people are going through this. A lot of it has nothing to do with your personal actions, and it's a byproduct of systems. And, let's just get through this shit. 1 in 3 Americans are in collections right now.
Wow. 1 in 3. I'm not surprised because there are systems in place. There are things that have that we've been trained, or we thought the systems that do. And most people want to have so much integrity. They want to pay off their debt. They want to. Like you said, it caught them. The inflation caught them. Credit card went from, I got this credit card at 9% or 7%, and now they're telling me it's 24%. Where does that payment come from? How does that, how do I do that when I have 4 or 5 of them, or medical things happen, or family issues happen, and now we go, and then we've also been taught that our relationship with money is, if you have a lot of it, it's bad. That if I'm doing the right thing, then somehow, I'm not, I'm this evil person. I was just talking to another person about, even our society and our movies and everything. We see all these great superhero movies, but the guy who has all the money is always the bad guy. He's always, the Spider-Man, it's the Green Goblin, right? What is he, a billionaire? Superman, it's, he doesn't have any money, but Lex Luthor is the billionaire. That's the bad guy. People say, well, Batman, doesn't, he's a billionaire, but Batman doesn't have any superpowers. So he's the only superhero. Yeah. And so we have this relationship with money that we don't understand. And because we don't understand it, we're so afraid to ask. And so what you're doing is helping people say, I don't have to ask, but somebody's going to help me and teach me and train me. In the culture, at least in the African-American community, we are never taught anything about money. Our families don't know about it. We don't talk about it at the dinner table. And yet we're expected to live these lives of, okay, yeah, my budget. And then you ask them, do you even have a budget? No, I don't have a budget. When you get down to it, and then I see this thing. I work with seniors when I do a lot of reverse mortgages and stuff to kind of help with just figure out how to live. And I got a couple in Florida right now that are, literally to the point where I can't, if I don't do something, I'm going to lose my house, that I spent all these years doing. And so I don't have you're on Social Security. You can't qualify for, more debt. Although people will tell you, we'll give you a hard money loan at 30% or something like that. And then you just go crazy. So I appreciate so much what you're doing. I mean, are you finding that, as people are able to use the app, and it is a relief that they're changing kind of that mindset and how they think about money and how money interacts with what things that they do? Or
So we launched the app to the public 6 months ago. So getting out of debt is sort of like it's akin to weight loss. It's not an overnight process, right? It is a habitual thing. And we just want to show the reality of the numbers and make it very accessible for people to take the power into their own hands, right? And the app does everything for them, but they have to do it, right? But statistics show that people that go through a program, that actually go through it, that have they're not likely to get themselves into the situation again, because now they understand what it's like. They just never knew, right? You hit the nail on the head. Like, I often say this, when I'm on podcasts or what have you, it's sort of a double-edged problem. We just talked about before inflation and how that had a existential threat to people's personal finances and what people are going through right now, which is a staggering growth of delinquencies in America because people are putting average bills on their credit cards. And along with that is, you're basically robbing Peter to pay Paul, and there's an end to that, right? Which is, you're not going to be able to do it anymore because they're going to stop being able to issue you money once you fall behind, right? So that's a systemic, system-built problem, right? That has nothing to do with you. On the other side of the coin, you're taught in high school, I don't care where you are, right? This is very, I've seen this trend in every culture where you're taught in high school or elementary school how to dissect a frog, but you're not taught how to use a credit card, right?
Exactly.
Which is completely asinine to me, because when the hell are you going to walk outside your house and start cutting up frogs as your daily part of life?
Yeah.
By the way, my wife is a doctor, so she'll argue with me
She
about
goes
the
out.
value. Always when I say that, she'll be like, there's a huge benefit to learning biology. Okay, I get it. But you're definitely going to use a credit card, right? You're definitely going to interact with it. And at the very least, you will definitely offer the credit card because that's how they make money. That's why there's a bank on every corner. And you're not taught the most powerful thing in life. That's not from me. That's from Albert Einstein. The most powerful thing in the universe is compound interest.
Yep.
And compound interest can work for you or it can work against you. And the reason why there's a bank on every single corner in the most prominent neighborhoods on the planet, down to the local, right across the street from the local bodega, and having the most beautiful furniture on the planet and the nice glass windows and the most prominent buildings, is because they've been harnessing the power of compounding interest used against society. And that's unfortunately where we're at. We're there. We're there as a society. I mean, and then there's another problem, which is the trifecta, which is basically the fact that we're a culture of wanting things that we can't have. We live in an Instagram society where Kim Kardashian can flaunt her expensive crap in front of the faces of young kids that look up to that and want all that shit. Yeah. And that looks like happiness, and that's extremely marketable. And, we're a country of consumers.
We are. And when we think about value, I tell people that, the piece of paper that money is just a piece of paper, but it's the value that we put on it. And that value is pretty much almost up there with oxygen, because we need it to be able to transact. I'm not going to grow chickens. I'm not going to, agriculturally support myself. So I got to buy stuff. And then everybody that I know who gets into a situation where debt is that they say, I can't breathe. I can't breathe because the debt is putting so much weight on me, and the things that, like you talked about, and the interest and debt and all that. And so if we don't understand how to value that the money gives us, and now I think, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, because we don't even have it in our hands anymore. I'm not giving it to you no more. This is coming out of my hand. It's just zeros that are on a, in a bank account somewhere. And I look on it on light that comes onto a computer that says, this is how much I'm worth. And then we think our worth is built into this whole money exchange thing. And then we just go, okay, I don't know what to, and then when you get in trouble, you go, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how I got here. Somebody sold me this. And there's all these folks that are trying to, I don't know how many calls a day I get where somebody's trying to take, give me how this is going to be better because they're in my life. How do we avoid, switch that value thought process and be able to resist all the people who are telling me it's going to be better if I just give them some money and then they're going to fix it for me?
Yeah. It's a really big problem. I think that, I think that one of the best things to ever come out of the technological era that we're going through is access to information, right? So I think more than ever, leveraging communities is much, like, you don't even have to leave your house to be part of a community. I mean, Reddit is an amazing resource for information, and I think before you do it, look it up, right? I think that it's very valuable for you to spend the time and invest in your future self. Like, I think a lot of times we get into issues because we want answers to our problems right away. And we want that instant gratification. But I think that along with instant gratification, there's a huge price to pay. And a lot of times it's making the wrong decision. I think you got to do your research. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And I just think that as society and we got to lift each other up.
Yeah.
We got to share information. I mean, that's why I do this shit. That's why I try to go on my social media, try to tell everybody to DM me. I'm in debt relief. Like, it's not the most sexiest business of the world, right? But if you need help with your money, like, I'm doing this for you, right? So just DM me. If I can't help you, I'll put you in the right direction. If you need help growing your business, I love getting involved with that. I've been mentoring founders for, over a decade through different programs. And it's part of who I am. It's what I want to do. So, like, let's just fucking help each other. And when you learn, which you will, because you're going to get kicked in the face enough, just like we all did, to learn the right way of doing things, you just keep going. You keep going. Don't forget what it was like to not have access to information and be a community leader and be a mensch is what we call it, in the Jewish religion, called being a mensch, and pay it forward, help other people, That's where you get your true happiness, Dr. B.
It is. You are so right. So the other thing that and kind of just pivoting a little bit is there are folks who are willing to work hard. There are people who are willing to go out there and work for 6 months for 11 days of being able to play for an hour, in that analogy. And so helping entrepreneurs and helping people who want to do that don't just know how is part of something that you do. What would you say to that person is like, I don't really know what my purpose is. I just know I will work my butt off because I want more out of life. Kind of like what you were saying is, as you were growing up, I just knew what I had wasn't enough and I want more and I'm willing to do the work.
You kicked my ass. You kicked my ass, So, like, I think that, again, well, two things. I think that it's not just about working hard, it's about working smart, right? Yeah. And I know that, for one, like, I didn't grow up in an environment where I had all these, like, mentors around me, and you're very blessed if you have a great network of mentors that you could tap into and ask them for personal advice. But if you want to use a little bit of grit, mentors are all around us. They're in the form of books that we could pick up and read. You're not reinventing the wheel here, right? Making money is a skill. And there are many ways to learn that skill. And I think that it's sort of part of the journey to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And in my teachings, at least, when I either mentor or I've taught a class on this before, I think that it really behooves you to be self-empowered enough where you go and figure it out. Because I tend to take a more Socratic approach, meaning like, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I'm going to tell you what mindset you should have. And that mindset is that you want to win and you want to have good values and you got to prepare yourself properly because it's not going to be easy. And like we said when we first started our conversation, it took me 10 years to look like an overnight success.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But like within that success is the messy middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
To quote Scott Belsky's book, which is an amazing book on what it's actually like to grow a business, right? And with every business that looks great to you, there's a story of how they almost didn't make it, right? Or they got kicked in the ass 100 times. You know, everybody looks at a guy like Dave Portnoy, you know? Like, go look at Dave Portnoy's old videos. That guy grinded it out. I mean, I saw him in a video and he looked so unhealthy back in the day, like pimping out or trying to sell his, penny saver that he created. You know, when Barstool was just a newspaper, selling advertisements, he was just running around trying to get shit together. I mean, that's what it takes, right? And ultimately, I think you learn as you go easier ways of doing things that are less painful, better ways of getting involved with the right people, but you got to start. And once you start, you can't stop. Because if there's one common trait with successful people, it's that they kept going. No matter what happened, what adversity they met at the time where they met it, they kept going. So you got to keep going. If you keep going and you put your 10,000 hours in, you will figure something out.
Man, I love that. And thank you for saying that making money is a skill, because we have so many people in our world that think, hey, I'm going to get on YouTube, I'm going to sing a song, and then, or whatever it is, and I'm going to be an overnight. There's no skill. I mean, they may have some talent, but running a business, and there's a skill to making money. And you have to have that, like you said, you have to start and then you have to keep going, because so many people are just no delayed gratification, they think that everything's instant. I get on, I do something, I make a whole bunch of money, and I don't have to go through whatever's the life is going to put me through in order to come out the other end. And like you said, 100% of the people that, unless they were, trust fund babies or inheritance and they struggle, or lottery winners or something like that, are going to have to go through, a ton of stuff. They're going to have to go through their relatives and their people that they're around telling them they suck and they stop and they need to stop. And, I think we all have that, where we just go, stop telling me I can't do this, or because I'm not going to stop. So you might as well give up on that. But so many people give up so quickly. Is it because we're just in this society that says it's easy, or we got the easy button to hit? Why is it that people say, I'm willing to do it, and then a month later, 2 months later, a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, 14 years later, saying, I'm done, I can't do it no more, I'm just going to work for somebody else?
I think, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately. If you really want something and you go and try to do it, the universe is going to test you.
Yes.
And your getting through that is the challenge to meet, to see how much you actually want it.
I like that. Yeah.
That's one side of the coin. And I've been meditating on that. The other side is that, and I've been saying this a lot lately, when you're in that rare air of stepping outside your comfort zone to do something extraordinary. And I'm not talking about sending rockets to Mars. I'm talking about doing something extraordinary. To me, is stepping outside your comfort zone, right? Some people can't even walk outside their house. I think the term is agoraphobic.
Yep.
And that's a big deal. That's extraordinary for that person, right? So I'm going to label that all the same. When you reach those moments of extraordinary challenges and you are in rare air, you are stepping up to a level that most people can't get through. If you're in that rare air, you're going to face turbulence. It's part of the game. And I love preparing people on that, right? And by the way, the more turbulence, the more you know you're right where you should be, right? And with my experience, before the payout is the most turbulent times ever. Right before you close that big deal, the whole thing gets screwed up and it's about to go away.
Yeah.
You're going to be challenged. So most people can't hack it, Dr. B, especially, and honestly, you want to have a conversation about this. I mean, I see it all day long, like with individuals that just like blame everybody else around them.
Yes.
You know, they become victims and they don't, true accountability is lost in our society today. I think there's definitively a lot of fluff, but that just means that if you're strong enough, you have major opportunities to grow right now. You have a bunch of soft people in the world that you could cut through like butter to be successful. Like, go do it if you really want it. I think that's the best time for somebody that isn't going to be like that.
Do you think, so you get into that turbulent thing and you're going through it. Is that when you seek people out that can help you, or is that when you just internally go, I'm going to do this? Because I see both sides of that, you know, that coin where, hey, I don't know how to do this. Let me go find somebody or information or a podcast or a YouTube video or something to help me move through something I don't know. And I don't think enough of us do that. We think we can do everything by ourselves. And then on the other side of it, sometimes we just seek out the wrong people. Or I think it's more the expectation that if I ask you, if I call Jason, he better help me. If he doesn't help me, then that's why my business failed.
That's true. That's true.
You
know, that was like the victim blaming.
Yeah.
So personally, I'm working on it. You know, I don't think I've had the healthiest of ways of dealing with things in my life. Like, I've often become a little bit of a introvert when the time is rough for me, and I internalize a lot. I think that my coping mechanisms have definitively over time haven't been the healthiest because of that. I'm starting to talk about it. I think I do it in a lot of form of, I find helping other people to be very therapeutic. So like focusing on other people's problems sort of makes my problems melt away. So I'm very like motivated to do that. But I also believe one thing that I think has been healthy for, you know, a good portion of my life is I love to read. You know, I immerse myself in a really good book, and depending on what I'm going through and the time that I'm going through it is like sort of like very indicative of like the book that I'll be reading. Like I'm about to raise money right now. It's a very tough climate to raise money. Venture capital is completely shifted. We need it because we're high growth and we have burn. And in order to become in everybody's house, we have to make a major investment. And, you know, there's a lot of stress behind the business partners and the lives and the people that I want to help. So it's very stressful. So like, I like to read things that, you know, sort of reminds me of how insignificant I am in the world, which makes me bolder in my moves, makes it easier for me to talk about what I do. I love older books. Like, I think like books that have tested like sort of like, you know, have made it through the test of time. It's like validated. Like, I think a lot of books are sort of modern books are in vogue, and it's just basically to keep up with like a social conversation about what books you're reading. It's like, oh, I read, but I go, and one of the books that I've been kind of attaching myself to is Meditations, which is a diary of Marcus Aurelius. And and that is in vogue today. Like Ryan Holiday has sort of, put a spotlight on Marcus Aurelius and sort of the ancient philosophers of that era and beyond that have sort of had this mentality around stoicism. And like, I am way, way into that right now. Not the best study in the world, but I'm trying. And, but it just gives me a lot of peace. And a lot of the things that I've been able to ground myself in is a lot of the philosophies that comes out of stoicism. So I'm way into that right now.
That's so cool. Well, and thank you for bringing up that, you probably can't, you're not the best at it yet. You're working on it, but the answers can be found in many places. Some people think, well, I have to go spend all this money for a coach, or I have to spend, go find me mentors that, maybe I don't have it. And there are people out there who will help you. I'm an audio verbal person, so I'm going to go find somebody I can talk to, but I can do it in a book, right? I can do it on, like you said, there's so much information in the world. I can find some of those answers, and maybe I just need somebody to give me the direction to go where to look for the answers. And I can find that even in a video that's saying, okay, here's the 5 websites that you should go to in order to learn how to do this. And then you go do it. And I think there's so many people who won't. They won't go do it. They will just.
There's no excuse, Dr. B. There's no excuse anymore.
There isn't.
I mean, there's almost too much information. It's about what to believe and what not to believe at this point. But like, don't tell me that you can't find a path forward with the amount of information that you have access to. That just says to me that you don't really want it enough. There's no excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you don't know how to do it at first, right? Because if you knew how to do it, you'd already be doing it. So I mean,
it's also the joy of learning, I mean, that's why, somebody like Warren Buffett says he won't give his kids access to generational wealth because half the battle is learning how to obtain wealth. That's the beauty of life. That puzzle is like, why deny you of that life? Well, we all want to cheat to get to the end of the game, but that's not what you find out as you get older. Is that's just part of the point is the game itself. You got to enjoy the journey.
Well, and 10 years is going to go by regardless. And so you have to decide, what am I going to do in this next 10 years? Because in 10 years from now, you're going to look back and go, what did I do? And if you did nothing, you're the only one to blame for it because you had access to everything. What didn't, we're kind of winding down on time now. What didn't we talk about that you would love our listeners to know about you or your businesses or access or whatever it is that you want to, let everybody know about?
Can you repeat that question? My wife was texting me like everything. When my wife calls, if I'm not, I could be on your podcast, CNN. It's like, this is the emergency that you have to deal with. I'm at the grocery store and I need to know right now what type of oranges you want. No, go ahead.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So the question was, what didn't we talk about that you want to make sure our listeners know?
I think we covered a lot of really good stuff here, Dr. B. I'm honored to be here and part of your audience. And, that this is who I am. This is what I do. I love having these authentic conversations. And I just want everybody out there, if you're going through a problem with your debt, I want you to first know that you're not alone and that everything's going to be okay. Just because you're going through this moment right now, A, it doesn't make you a bad person. And B, it doesn't mean you're going to be in this for the rest of your life. You're going to get through this. Most of the time, it's a math problem. Math got you into this problem. Math will get you out of the problem. So we try to put feelings aside and deal with it like a business. Secondary to that, if you're running a company or you had an exciting idea, you just need a little bit of help. I don't charge any of this stuff. This is just like, what I love to do. ping me. I love to hear ideas and help people. I get on the phone with founders every single day, and I love to hear about new things and meet interesting people. So don't be shy. Feel free to DM. My Instagram is at Jason Saltzman. My Twitter is at SaltzmanJason. Feel free to hit me up on both of those. The website to download Relief, it's available in the iOS, the App Store, and the Google Play Store for both Android and iOS. Just look up Relief. And the website, which just leads you to download the app, is relief.app.
All right. Well, thank you. The software is called Relief. And whether you're a person who's struggling with debt or someone, which all of us do, that really don't want to share all the things and don't want the community and everybody else to know, have them download the software. Have them go through the process of it helping you do what you want to do anyways. Because the values that we hold and the integrity that we have, it hurts us even more when we don't know how to respond or we can't respond. And so, Jason, thank you for being on the show. For those who hit subscribe, notifications, every single one of these podcasts are geared to helping you become the person that you want to be so that you can do the things that God put you on this earth to do. So hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for the time that you spent with us. And Jason, we will have more conversations. I can promise you that. So thank you again for being part of it. You guys have a wonderful, just incredible day.